that's the kind of textbook example of Dear Man. Does that make sense?
It makes sense and it sounds easy, but I know it's not because I'm just like as you're thinking of it, I could think of that M is difficult, man.
Yeah,
That we started here and now we're all the way over here. Let's bring
yeah.
it back. How do we maintain control of a
But
conversation when
why is that difficult? Why is that staying mindful of the objective
I
difficult
guess I'll give you an example for me is a person tries rather than focusing on what I'm talking about, they throw back to me, well, you always, like, and it's like, okay, so now we're talking about something I've done rather than what I've brought into the discussion. And
Yeah.
now
So
it's like,
what
now
happens when that person says that to
I
you?
begin defending. I begin
Why?
defend, um, because I don't agree with the attack, I guess,
So
is
what's
what it
happening in your system?
anger, yeah, I would say anger is the first thing I resonate with when I'm hypothetically going through this.
Yeah,
Um,
100%. So what's happening in your system is that you're going into a fight mode,
right. Yeah.
right? So in other words, your system's gone into distress. And when your system goes into distress, you're going to go fight, flight, freeze, submit, distract. How are you going to deal with that? And for you, what you're describing there is now I'm in a fear-based state because you're challenging the way that I feel or what it is that I'm trying to achieve. So I'm going into overcompensation or fight to try to deal with this situation. So basically what you're recognizing is that your system goes into distress. And when your system goes into distress, we go into automatic behavioral responses. If we haven't done the work of building awareness, practicing distress tolerance, going to work on those underlying stories. And even when we have done that work, we can still go into distress that overwhelms our system. I'll give you an example of that in a minute, of how it worked for me and what I had to do using the Dear Man skill to kind of reconcile the particular situation, right? So what you're describing, Aaron, is what everybody who has those big emotional experiences goes through. When we try to have a conversation with somebody about our objectives, they don't agree with us 100%. It sends our system into a fear-based state because there's something going on that we don't know how to handle and we haven't recognized it. And then the automatic behavioral response takes us away from that original objective. And then we sit there afterwards going, what the fuck just happened? Why
Yeah.
did I do that?
Well, let's give a simple example, Stephen. Just a simple. I noticed my significant other hasn't been taking out the garbage like they said they would. So I decide to say that this is something I've noticed that is upsetting me, and I'd like to know if you're able to do it or not, because if not, I'd be willing to take it. But before I can get those words out, it's, yeah, and you're never turning the water off in the bathroom. I've asked you, and you leave your towels on the floor, you da 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 da, and it's like, yeah, okay, can we talk about that afterwards? I went, no, and it's like, what the hell? I can't, and it's difficult, I guess, and it's like you say, it's not mechanic, it's not, people don't react the way I think they should. And when they
Exactly.
don't, like you say, I go into this isn't how it was supposed to happen.
Yeah. So again, we go back to your expectation. I
Yeah.
expect that you are going to react this way. And when you don't, there is an automatic behavioral response, right? Those expectations, there's nothing wrong with expectations. It's what it means when they're not met.
Mhm.
Right. So if I expect that you're going to agree with me on this, and I'm going into this conversation with the expectation that you agree with me, and I've got a story, so I've got an unrelenting standard around that particular agreement that you have to agree with me. And if you don't, that means XYZ, then I'm going to go into emotions like guilt and shame and fear that come into my system just by having a conversation about, to use your example, taking the garbage out or whatever it is that we're going to do, right? That when somebody comes back and says, well, you didn't do this and you didn't do that, there's a fear of guilt and shame that comes into our system. We go into that overcompensation, that whatever it is that happens in our behavioral responses, and it takes us away from achieving the main objective because the emotion gets in the way.
Well, here's the thing. I get what you're saying, Stephen. And this is why the work is so important. And finding our tribe is also so important because
Yes.
if we find that we're having these types of disagreements, yet the person we're discussing it with is having the response that you're describing, which is they can't even address the issue because every time it's brought up, they go into a state of guilt or
Yep.
shame.
Able,
And we
capable,
can't
willing.
communicate. It's like, well, then maybe we need to evaluate if you and I are even in the same tribe.
Yeah.
Because
Able, capable, and willing.
there we go. What do you mean by that exactly, Steve?
So when we put an expectation on somebody to be something inside of our support network, right? So when we're talking about interpersonal effectiveness, we need to know what the support network looks like, and we need to know what our expectations are on other people. And this takes a lot of self-honesty, eh? Like really having the ability to sit back and be honest about what your expectations are on other people, and on yourself as well. Then once we know what those expectations are, we can take a step back from them and start asking the question around whether these expectations and the standards that we're setting for other people are realistic. And how we know whether they're realistic is whether the person is able, capable, or willing to meet the expectation. Now, I just did a video on this recently, where what I was trying to say about able, capable, and willing is that in new relationships, when we're trying to build new relationships, that can be a little bit tricky because there's no history. How do we know whether somebody is able, capable, and willing to meet the expectation? We communicate what the expectation is and then observe what they do. Right? So, in a brand new relationship, let's say I didn't know you and we were just getting to know each other, going for coffee and stuff. I'm gonna, maybe test the waters with certain things to see what the trust level's like. I'm gonna open up slowly, and we'll talk about boundaries in a bit. Having boundaries with myself, to build that relationship and observe the way that you're responding to see if you're able, capable, and willing to meet the expectation I've got inside of this relationship. Okay. In older relationships, so relationships that are already there, this is simply about looking, it's really quite simple. It's about what's the evidence? What's the history? So when I've tried to have these conversations with you, what's my expectation? Let's say my expectation is that when I need support, Erin is going to be there. As soon as I shoot Erin, and this is where honesty really has to come in, right? As soon as I need Erin to be there to have a supportive conversation, he's going to be there. That's what my expectation is, right? And people say that that's not what their expectation is sometimes in relationships. Then why does it bother you so much when you reach out to somebody and they're not there, right? So first of all, we need to look at whether that that expectation is realistic, right? Is it an unrelenting standard? So there's a lot of different work that we need to do around those expectations that revolves around the schema of unrelenting standards and things like that. But at the same time, if my expectation is that you're going to be there, what's the history tell me? If I ask you to do something and you're never there, you never support me because, and I'm being very literal with the black and white word never. Every single time I reach out to you, you're not there, or every single time I reach out to you, you come back with an attack on me. So I've got people that I know, that I work with, and that I know personally, that have a belief that their family is supposed to support them a certain way. And then when they reach out to their family to support them that way, their family doesn't support them that way. They support them in a way that the only way that they're able, capable, and willing to do, which then pisses off that person. And they get all mad and it spirals into a fight, flight, freeze, submit, distract kind of scenario. They back off from it and then they go back with the same expectation. Well, my family's going to support me with everything that I need. But they've never demonstrated either an ability. So do they have the time to support you the way that you want them to? Do they have the space in their schedule to be there when you need them to be there? Are they capable? Do they have the skills to do what it is that you're asking them to do? Are they trying to learn the skills? Are they going to work on themselves to know how to support you? And are they actually willing to support you the way that you want them to? If they keep demonstrating that they're not able, capable, and willing, then we have to come back to accountability, which is why do I keep asking the person to do something that they've never demonstrated an ability, a capability, or a willingness to do?
The clip you just watched was taken from the upcoming podcast, A Conversation for Liberation. If you like the content of this clip, please subscribe to the channel, smash that like button, and turn on the notifications so you can stay up to date with when each full episode gets released. As always, if you want to know more about what we do at the Liberation Place, come join the live online meetings that I facilitate each week for free on Zoom. I'll leave a link to the page containing more information about these groups in the description below. Thanks for watching. Hope to see you again soon. Take care, be safe, and be well.